1. Introduction. RAWSEP view. The United States government was on track in the Biden administration to reduce the prices for both clean energy heat pumps and clean energy electric cars. Trump tariffs are expected to upset those plans to prevent future air pollution and prevent climate change. The United States government should, instead of certifying wood stoves as safe when they are not safe, go forward with regulations that ban wood stove use and direct government money for use of forest refuse only. For home building and furniture building. For just a few examples of use of forest products for non-burning uses, it is well known from scientific and medical research that wood burning is a substantial source of PM2.5 emissions, yet the wood burning industry uses the scientifically debunked theory named carbon neutrality of wood burning to argue that wood burning replacing coal burning in industry and in a trickle-down argument that wood burning should continue for home heating should continue. Presumably because it is called renewable. Wood may be renewable in the sense that a tree can be planted in the place of a cut-down burned tree, but it takes centuries or decades for the newly planted tree to attain the stature of the cut-down burned tree. During those centuries or decades, photosynthesis, which converts CO2 to oxygen and so sequesters some carbon, will not take place at the same rate as photosynthesis was performed previously, and wood burning emits both CO2 and PM2.5, and PM2.5 is not absorbed by trees, so PM2.5 is not diminished by planting a tree in the place of a cut-down and burned tree. In fact, a living tree closes its pores against the presence of PM2.5 from nearby wood burning, just as humans hold their breath in the presence of PM2.5 from nearby wood burning. And when a tree closes its pores, the level of photosynthesis that absorbs CO2 pollution goes down. Wood burning emits 90% PM2.5 particulate matter of 2.5 micrometer size, the perfect size to infiltrate the human lungs, setting off a cascade of human health problems and early deaths. Contrary to many beliefs, wood burning emits 2.8 times the PM2.5 as the fossil fuel coal burning, and wood burning emits 450 times the PM2.5 as the fossil fuel natural gas burning. Replacing coal burning with wood burning creates more air pollution in the form of CO2 and PM2.5 than coal burning. This emission data comes from testing the cleanest burning wood stove in the United Kingdom, the Eco-Design Wood Stove and International Convention does not count the emissions from wood burning. The emissions from wood burning are erased from all countries around the world when calculating if each country has met its climate goals. This non-counting or erasure of wood burning emissions data from climate goals does not mean wood burning emissions do not exist. RAWSEP view. Purple air. PM2.5 monitors hanging from the eaves of the house of a near neighbor should be used to measure the level of PM2.5 in the air hyperlocally in the yards of near neighbors of indoor residential wood burners. If PM2.5 levels exceed World Health Organization standards of 5 micrograms per cubic meter annually, then that evidence of air pollution from wood burning should lead to the shutdown of that indoor residential wood burning appliance, one appliance at a time if necessary.
Hi, my name is Lily. Andrew gave you the intro to Residents Against Wood Smoke Emission Particulates and their concern for air pollution from indoor residential wood burning. Residents Against Wood Smoke Emission Particulates, or RAWSEP, would like every near neighbor of an indoor residential wood burner whose wood smoke enters their yards and sickens the near neighbors to have a purple air PM2.5 monitor hanging from the eaves of their home to measure the level of PM2.5 entering their yards. That measurement of air pollution should be used as evidence of unnecessary air pollution, and each indoor residential wood burner should be shut down based on that evidence, one indoor residential wood burner at a time if necessary. The presentation by Andrew ended at 2 minutes 5 seconds. The same presentation by Emma starts at 2 minutes 3 seconds before the end of this podcast. So I am Lily, your timekeeper, and you can start the next podcast at 2 minutes 5 seconds in if you would not like to see the presentation by Andrew a second time. This presentation by me, Lily, ends at 5 minutes in. What you will see in the main content of this RAWSEP podcast will be news about air pollution from indoor residential wood burning and how that air pollution is being combated by ordinary people just like you who are unfortunately near neighbors of indoor residential wood burners at this time. There will also be news about unnecessary and highly polluting use of wood as fuel in industrial wood burners and preventable air pollution from wood burning wildfires. There will also be news about air pollution from PM2.5 from gas-powered cars. There will also be news about airborne diseases which are also preventable with vaccines such as COVID-19 and measles and whooping cough, to name just a few. In 2025, Residents Against Wood Smoke Emission Particulates is also concerned with combating the Trump destruction of government funding for programs which protect human health through the Department of Health and Human Services, and Trump destruction of programs which fund the science and medical research plan to protect human health from preventable illnesses. Protecting human health is a patriotic act, and our defense against enemies is weakened if we are not as healthy as we can be. Heat pump rebates are now offered by the federal government, distributed through the eligible United States, are available in 2025, and are the best, cleanest, and now cheapest alternative to indoor residential wood burning if that burning is actually done to purportedly save money. Wind and solar as sources of the electricity that powers heat pumps and electric cars is also cheaper than burning wood. The adverse health effects that are caused by indoor residential wood burning also come at a cost to near neighbors, both in shortening and ending their lives, and in actual hospital, clinic, and funeral costs. Instead of being compensated monetarily, near neighbors should instead be able to achieve immediate relief by stopping indoor residential wood burning in their hyper-localized neighborhoods, which relief readings from purple air PM2.5 monitors used as evidence of air pollution will help them achieve. Welcome to news about hopeful scientific and medical achievements that will also help us achieve the goal of clean air to breathe.
Webisode 57DHYAFA December 10, 2025 Blocking sunlight does not reduce PM2.5 or other emissions. In Webisode 57DHYAFA 1 Centers for Disease Control data why CDC health data are still reliable even amid challenges to communications and integrity. 2 RFK Junior expands baseless COVID vaccine safety inquiry. Washington, D.C. Food and Drug Administration FDA expands COVID vaccine inquiry to adult deaths. The agency under RFK Junior claimed that 10 deaths of children were linked to the shots, although it did not release evidence. To support the assertions, 3 RFK Junior expands baseless RSV vaccine safety inquiry. Washington, D.C. Food and Drug Administration FDA U.S. health officials examine RSV shots again despite documented safety and efficacy. The FDA is reviewing RSV vaccines, which have drastically lowered infant hospitalizations, a spokesperson confirmed for California. The contradictions of Gavin Newsom. How the California governor became the 2028 Democratic frontrunner. 5 Massachusetts U.S. judge strikes down Trump order blocking wind energy projects. Federal judge declared January executive order unlawful, ruling in favor of a coalition of state attorneys general. 6 Michigan House Democrat seeks to impeach RFK Jr. for undercutting public health. The move by Representative Haley Stevens, a Michigan Democrat who is running for Senate, does not have the support of her Democratic Party leaders and is all but certain to fail. 7 Africa, Kenya, Nairobi RAWSEP view blocking sunlight does not reduce PM2.5 or other harmful emissions such as greenhouse gas emissions. From the article headline, the 7th United Nations Environment Assembly opens in Nairobi, Kenya on December 8, 2025. 8 and 9 headlines. Main content. 1 Centers for Disease Control data why CDC health data are still reliable even amid challenges to communications and integrity. Excerpts edited by RAWSEP for brevity and clarity in relationship to residents against wood smoke emission particulates. A 501c3 nonprofit organization. Your local epidemiologist newsletter December 10, 2025. Back in February, a lifetime ago, when data were being edited under executive orders and all CDC communications were effectively frozen, I outlined 4 scenarios that would signal real cause for concern about CDC information. 2 of them have now unfolded in the past month. The breach of scientific integrity, for example, the autism and vaccine site, along with other less publicized changes, the injection of political messaging into HHS channels. Never did I think I would see it, but here we are. The full extent of the damage is still unclear, and how much more may occur remains unknown. But one question stands out: what is the integrity of the data itself? Public health data, the public information used to estimate disease, hospitalization, and death rates, for example, are a vital resource. Their value lies in their purity, reliability, accuracy, and accessibility. Despite everything, I remain confident in CDC data. This largely stems from the system of the U.S. public health, unconventional, decentralized structure, a fragmented system for epidemiologists, but one that now works to our advantage. You had 6 top questions. 1 Why can we still trust CDC data? The key is a nuance. Most people find boring. Public health data in the U.S. do not flow from the top-down. Data are decentralized and built from the bottom-up. Local and state health departments and hospital systems collect, manage, clean, and report data before they ever reach CDC. Take flu data. When someone is hospitalized, the hospital records the case. That information moves to local or state health departments where teams verify and clean it. Only then do states upload finalized numbers to CDC through secure system. CDC then stitches these local puzzle pieces into a coherent national picture. This role is essential because diseases do not respect state lines. CDC data inform cross-state responses, hospital capacity, planning, testing needs, resource allocation, early warning signals, and shared lessons across jurisdictions. Without CDC, we would have 50 separate snapshots instead of a unified national system because CDC primarily stitches data rather than collects it. Federal interference is much harder. CDC does run direct data collection for vital statistics and surveys, including collecting information on vaccination uptake, mortality, and health behaviors such as smoking and nutrition. Most of these datasets remain intact with exceptions. Some data elements have been removed, like transgender status, and funding cuts may halt certain surveys too. What about states that may also want to interfere with data? For many diseases, reporting is legally required by states. A classic example is measles. When a patient is diagnosed, the healthcare provider must report the case to the county or state health department, but states voluntarily share this information with CDC. If a state wants to stop reporting to CDC for whatever reason and for whatever data, they have the authority to do so. We saw this challenge during COVID-19 when some states like Texas stopped reporting vaccination data after the emergency period ended. The result was a significant gap on the CDC dashboard, leaving an incomplete national picture. This year, you could easily see a potential flip scenario. Some states could choose to stop reporting to CDC because of a lack of trust in HHS. 3 Is automation helping detect outbreaks in this moment of strain? What about layoffs? Yes, automation is incredibly helpful for outbreaks, but humans do the work too. When someone is diagnosed with a foodborne illness, for example, the testing lab typically sends the bacterial isolate to the state public health lab. The samples are genetically sequenced and results are uploaded to PulseNet CDC database. Then algorithms scan for genetic clusters on data from across the country. The core of outbreak response still relies on human investigation, interviewing patients, tracing food histories, and linking cases to a source. The more cuts we have to staff, the more limited our capacity will be to respond to some of these outbreaks. Many are bracing for next year when budgets will be cut by billions. 4 Have data communications changed? Collecting data is one thing, communicating it is another. Communications capacity has been dramatically reduced. The National Public Health Coalition, a grassroots organization of fired HHS employees, found the Office of Communications is operating at roughly half of its pre-October capacity. Source: CDC Data Project. As you can imagine, this impacts outputs. Take Health Alert Network, HAN. These are safety alerts sent to physicians as a heads up on what to look for when there is an emerging issue. The HAN office still exists, but it takes significant initiative to complete a HAN, even when the administration cares about such matters. HAN has published only 5 alerts since the new administration took office. For comparison, HAN published 16 alerts in in 2024 and 18 in 2023-5, is there a world where a US-based NGO gets created to effectively replace the CDC? To some extent, this is already happening as quickly as possible. We see this from multiple angles: regional coalitions sharing communications briefs and insights, groups not part of the federal government synthesizing data, like the Vaccine Integrity Project communication efforts, including professional organizations like AAP, who has stepped up on social media platforms, and grassroots efforts like the Evidence Collective data democratization efforts like point5. The problem is that nothing can ever compete with the far-reaching infrastructure and authority of the budget of the federal government. 6. What does this mean for you? You can feel confident that CDC data are accurately tracking diseases, and if you are data gurus like us, you can also feel confident using the CDC data. We will let you know when our confidence decreases, but also keep in mind that other sources exist. Local and state public health departments remain primary sources of data, often publishing their own dashboards. Data sources, which are not federal, such as Wastewater Skin Biobot and point5, provide additional data sets. Bottom line, the data infrastructure is largely intact thanks to a decentralized system. As a nation, we will need to continuously ensure this is the case, as data are gold. The communications capacity, however, has been severely weakened. Americans should not have to monitor inputs and outputs from the leading public health agency in the nation, but here we are. Love Wiley. 2. RFK Junior expands baseless COVID vaccine safety inquiry. Washington, D.C. Food and Drug Administration FDA expands COVID vaccine inquiry to adult deaths. The agency under RFK Jr. claimed that 10 deaths of children were linked to the shots, although it did not release evidence to support the assertions. Excerpts edited by RAWSEP for brevity and clarity in relationship to residents against wood smoke emission particulates. A 501c3 nonprofit organization. The New York Times, December 9, 2025. The Food and Drug Administration has expanded its investigation of deaths possibly linked to the COVID vaccine to include adults as well as children, according to a Trump administration official. The inquiry began in September, spurred by Health Secretary the RFK Jr. repeated claims that the coronavirus vaccine is dangerous and deadly, despite the widespread scientific consensus that the shots are safe. At the time, the agency said that it was looking into deaths of children in apparent response to the vocal concerns of vaccine skeptics who are allies and supporters of RFK Jr. Former agency officials have said that they did not ignore concerns about the COVID vaccine. They said they had reviewed reports of childhood deaths filed with the agency. By examining autopsy reports and medical records, to the best we could see, these vaccines were not associated with the deaths of children. Dr. Peter Marks, the CDC former top vaccine regulator, said in September when news of the review first came out, "Is it possible that a death could have occurred that was related to the vaccines?" Yes, I guess possible. Some adult deaths related to COVID vaccines were widely known, including at least 3 attributed to a rare blood clotting complication from the Johnson & Johnson vaccine. Federal authorities initially paused and later stopped use of that vaccine in the United States. Among the broader changes sought by Dr. Prasad is a halt to updating well-tested vaccines to match circulating strains of viruses like the flu. Without time-consuming studies, such a requirement could make such vaccines obsolete before they are approved. After the Dr. Prasad memo emerged, 12 former FDA commissioners published an article in the medical journal in EJAM saying the changes undermine the public interest. They're the latest in a series of troubling changes at the FDA, including substantial departures of FDA staff that could diminish both the strength of the FDA and the health and safety of Americans. The 12 former commissioners wrote, "It remains unclear whether the agency will formalize the proposed changes into regulations or a guidance the way it typically describes such changes to pharmaceutical makers." 3. RFK Jr. expands baseless RSV vaccine safety inquiry. Washington, D.C. Food and Drug Administration FDA. U.S. health officials examine RSV shots again despite documented safety and efficacy. The FDA is reviewing RSV vaccines, which have drastically lowered infant hospitalizations, a spokesperson confirmed. Excerpts edited by RAWSEP for brevity and clarity in relationship to residents against wood smoke emission particulates, a 501c3 nonprofit organization. The Guardian, December 10, 2025. U.S. regulatory officials are examining the safety of RSV shots again, despite no published reports of safety issues, a move that could lead to the removal or limitation of shots that have dramatically lowered hospitalizations among babies. It is the latest move from U.S. health officials under RFK Jr., the Secretary of the U.S. Department of Health and Human Services (HHS) and a longtime anti-vaccine activist, to limit access to shots and to undermine public trust in the safe and effective products. Officials at the U.S. Food and Drug Administration (FDA) told 3 manufacturers of RSV preventative treatments for babies last week their products are being reviewed because of safety concerns raised by activists against vaccines. The RSV shots were the first time we had any kind of tools to prevent these complications, said Elias Cass, a naturopathic physician specializing in pediatrics in Seattle, Washington. RSV was the most common cause of hospitalization among U.S. infants. He added, to have a tool to prevent that is incredible. There were 2 working groups assessing evidence on RSV for the Advisory Committee on Immunization Practices (ACIB) to the U.S. Centers for Disease Control and Prevention (CDC). One group focused on the vaccines given during pregnancy and the other on the preventative shots given to babies. No new safety information about RSV shots has been released. In fact, news from the group was positive. The shots to prevent RSV are one of the greatest public health breakthroughs in recent years, with dramatic declines in hospitalization. Vaccinating during pregnancy was 55% to 68% effective in keeping newborns from being hospitalized in the first 6 months of their lives, according to a survey of studies published in the New England Journal of Medicine in October. Babies who were given the preventative antibody shots were 79% to 83% less likely to be hospitalized. The study found decisions from the FDA could limit access to the shots, and public health experts worry that the announcements without evidence undermining the shots could affect public trust and confidence in vaccine safety. Before the shots were widely available, 2% to 3% of all all infants in the US were hospitalized for RSV, the respiratory illness, has also been associated with developing asthma. Almost every parent has some experience with RSV, so I think it is going to be a lot easier to talk about the risk and benefits of these interventions to parents just because they realize what a devastating disease it is. For California, the contradictions of Gavin Newsom, how the California governor became the 2028 Democratic frontrunner. Excerpts edited by RAWSEP for brevity and clarity in relationship to residents against wood smoke emission particulates. A 501c3 nonprofit organization transcript of the Ezra Klein show in the New York Times December 10, 2025, that Gavin Newsom, the governor of California, might want to run for president someday, has been widely believed for a long time that he would have a chance if he ran for president. That was less widely believed. A liberal white guy from a state the country considers badly governed just did not seem like the profile that either the Democratic Party or the country was looking for. Well, things change. If you look at polls of the likely Democratic field, now Newsom leads in many of them. If you look at the betting odds on who will be the 2028 Democratic nominee, Newsom is far ahead of anyone else. Admit it, Gavin Newsom is the 2028 frontrunner. Look, I know it is all very early to be talking about 2028, and in this episode one try not to. But even putting the future aside, Newsom has become without any doubt one of the leaders of the Democratic Party at a time when the party is desperately looking for leadership. And as a Californian, someone who has watched and covered Newsom for a long time, he has surprised me. He is experimenting, trying new things. He has a feel for this moment, not just in politics, but also in how attention now works in a way that very few other Democrats have demonstrated, and he does not seem in that way. So many Democrats seem afraid of taking risks and failing, or of making his own side angry. 5 Massachusetts U.S. judge strikes down Trump order blocking wind energy projects. Federal judge declared January executive order unlawful, ruling in favor of a coalition of state attorneys general. Excerpts edited by RAWSEP for brevity and clarity in relationship to residents against wood smoke emission particulates. A 501c3 nonprofit organization, The Guardian, December 9, 2020. 5A federal judge on Monday struck down the Trump executive order blocking wind energy projects, saying the effort to halt virtually all leasing of wind farms on federal lands and waters was arbitrary and capricious and violated U.S. law. A judge of the U.S. District Court for the District of Massachusetts vacated the Trump January 20, 2025 executive order blocking wind energy projects and declared it unlawful. The woman judge ruled in favor of a coalition of state attorneys general from 17 states and Washington, D.C., led by Letitia James, the New York Attorney General, that challenged the Trump Day 1 order that paused leasing and permitting for wind energy projects. See a related article titled "The Trump Hatred for Renewables Means the U.S. is Falling Behind the Rest of the World." Trump has been hostile to renewable energy, particularly offshore wind, and prioritizes fossil fuels to produce electricity. The woman Massachusetts Attorney General hailed the ruling as a victory for green jobs and renewable energy. Massachusetts has invested hundreds of millions of dollars into offshore wind, and today we successfully protected those important investments from the Trump unlawful order, the Massachusetts Attorney General said in a statement. She said she was grateful the court stepped in to block the Trump reckless and unlawful crusade against clean energy as New Yorkers face rising energy costs. We need more energy sources, not fewer. She said wind energy is good for our environment, our economy, and our communities. The coalition that opposed the Trump order argued that Trump does not have the authority to halt project permitting and that doing so jeopardizes the economy's energy mix. Public health and climate goals of U.S. states. The coalition includes Arizona, California, Colorado, Connecticut, Delaware, Illinois, Maine, Maryland, Massachusetts, Michigan, Minnesota, New Jersey, New Mexico, New York, Oregon, Rhode Island, Washington State, and Washington, D.C. They say they have invested hundreds of millions of dollars collectively to develop wind energy and even more on upgrading transmission lines to bring wind energy to the electrical grid. The judge allowed the states to proceed with claims that blocking permits for wind energy projects violates the Administrative Procedure Act, which outlines a detailed process for enacting regulations, but not the Constitution. Wind is the largest source of renewable energy in the United States, providing about 10% of the electricity generated in the nation, according to the American Clean Power Association. The executive director of the Alliance for Clean Energy New York said wind energy is a key component of powering the electric grid of the nation. Wind is currently one of the most cost-effective ways to generate power and is being used successfully not only in the United States but across the world. She said, with this ruling behind us, projects can now be judged on their merits. We thank the attorneys general who helped us get this case over the finish line. A representative of the Natural Resources Defense Council called the decision a win for consumers, union workers, U.S. businesses, clean air, and the climate. From the beginning of its time in office, the Trump administration put a halt to the wind energy projects that are needed to keep utility bills in check and the grid reliable. The wind order has been a devastating blow to workers, electricity customers, and the reliability of the power grid, she said, adding that the Trump administration should use this ruling as a wake-up call, stop its illegal actions, and get out of the way of the expansion of renewable energy. 6 Michigan House Democrat seeks to impeach RFK Junior for undercutting public health. The move by Representative Haley Stevens, a Michigan Democrat who is running for Senate, does not have the support of her Democratic Party leaders and is all but certain to fail. Excerpts edited by RAWSEP for brevity and clarity in relationship to residents against wood smoke emission particulates. A 501c3 nonprofit organization, The New York Times, December 10, 2025. Representative Haley Stevens of Michigan, a Democrat running for Senate, filed articles of impeachment on Wednesday against Health Secretary RFK Jr., making an all but certainly futile bid to charge him with undermining public health, diminishing decades of scientific and medical progress, and imperiling the health of the American people, in accusing RFK Jr. of an assault on the public health system that constitutes high crimes and misdemeanors. Ms. Stevens said the secretary had delayed biomedical innovation through the far-reaching and haphazard termination of working scientists. She cited the RFK Jr. cancellation of $8.9 billion in federal research grants and said he was chilling medical innovation including life-saving clinical research in what amounted to a violation of his oath of office with Republicans in control of Congress, it would be close to impossible for the articles of impeachment of Ms. Stevens to get a vote on the House floor or lead to a trial in the Senate, and though Ms. Stevens said she had discussed her impeachment push with Representative Hakeem Jeffries of New York, the minority leader, Democratic leaders are not backing it. Ms. Stevens is a centrist Democrat who may see a political upside in taking on the mantle of impeachment while running for Senate. Her Democratic opponents Mallory McMorrow and Abdul El Sayed have been generating enthusiasm and keeping pace with Ms. Stevens in terms of fundraising. Ms. Stevens said noted that she often heard from Republican doctors whose work was being affected by the RFK Jr. actions. RFK Jr. is carrying out a scientific coup d'etat of American public health and his conduct warrants impeachment. Ms. Stevens wrote in a letter to her colleagues. She added RFK Jr. represents the single largest self-created threat to public health, public trust, and the future of scientific progress in the United States. If we do not act, Americans will suffer. The secretary must go. 7 Africa, Kenya, Nairobi, RAWSEP view blocking sunlight does not reduce PM2.5 or other harmful emissions such as greenhouse gas emissions. From the article headline, the 7th United Nations Environment Assembly opens in Nairobi, Kenya on December 8, 2025. Excerpts edited by RAWSEP for brevity and clarity in relationship to residents against wood smoke emission particulates of 501c3 nonprofit organization The Guardian. View on solar geoengineering December 8, 2025. Africa has a point about this risky technology. Editorial sun dimming risks putting the thermostat of the planet under the Trump control. Better to adopt the precautionary principle with high-stakes science. It is fitting that the UN environment talks this week are in Nairobi, with Africa shaping the global climate conversation. The diplomats of the African continent are dealing with the vexed question of whether it is wise to try to cool the planet by dimming the rays of the sun. While not on the formal summit agenda, on the sidelines they are arguing that it is time to stop promoting solar geoengineering technology as a solution to global heating. It is hard to disagree. African nations have acted because they do not want their continent to become a test bed for unproven schemes to spray particles into the high atmosphere to reflect sunlight away from Earth for a small, uncertain cooling gain. They point to environmental, ethical, and geopolitical risks. That is why the continent is pushing for a global non-use agreement that would rule out public funding outdoor experiments, patenting, and official promotion of these technologies. The reason for a moratorium is obvious. Solar geoengineering does not cut greenhouse gas emissions. The potential side effects include altered rainfall patterns and the consequential pressure on food systems. Then there is the risk of a sharp temperature spike if the interventions were ever halted. The so-called termination shock. The opposition of African nations was such that they forced the withdrawal of a Swiss-backed resolution on solar radiation modification at the 2024 UN talks. Yet an industry is being built on the idea that someone can take charge of the global thermostat. A U.S.-Israeli firm is developing a spraying system for future cooling services to offer to governments. Other nations are pushing back. Mexico banned solar geoengineering experiments in 2023 after an unauthorized trial over its territory by a U.S. startup. Academics have already warned that the UK became the first major government to significantly fund solar radiation modification (SRM) through its Advanced Research and Invention Agency (ARIA). It is now backing scientists to research climate cooling hardware in small-scale field tests. Other scientists describe the move as naive, poorly governed, and scientifically incapable of proving SRM safe. Ministers ought to pull back research programs, have politics, hardware, and careers get built. Risky tech acquires funded backers. The actions of the U.S., the largest producer of oil and gas in the world, should be studied. The Trump administration has made American energy dominance the core of its economic strategy. Solar geoengineering offers a way to manage temperature risk without loosening the grip of the carbon economy. Controlling both the energy supply of the world and the global thermostat has obvious appeal to the White House and its billionaire backers. The call from the African governments for an agreement to not use solar geoengineering, echoing the precedents of landmine and chemical weapons bans, is a recognition that some technologies shift power so sharply that they create unmanageable risks. A line has to be drawn. The precautionary principle is used with other novel technologies. Why not here? The point is clearly that this power cannot be left to a few. The call from Africa should be taken seriously. None of this weakens climate policy. It would instead focus minds on measures that address the climate emergency, cutting fossil fuel use, investing in renewables, and paying for adaptation where damage is already baked in. 8 headlines. The New York Times, December 10, 2025. California Democrat opinion: how Governor Gavin Newsom became the 2028 frontrunner. For Democrats, the New York Times, RFK Jr. lack of knowledge of science and medicine. Does exercising in cold weather increase my risk of injury? The New York Times, RFK Jr. lack of knowledge of science and medicine. FDA expands COVID vaccine inquiry to adult deaths. The New York Times, RFK Jr. lack of knowledge of science and medicine. House Democrat seeks to impeach RFK Jr. for undercutting public health. The New York Times, Trump affordability says Americans are doing great even as views on the economy sour. The New York Times, Trump mastermind. The Stephen Miller stock sale raises questions. Ethics experts say. The New York Times, Europe, Ukraine, and Russia. The challenges to European security go beyond the Trump lack of support. The New York Times, Norway, Venezuelan visitor Machado will not pick up Peace Prize in person. Organizers say. The New York Times, 9 headlines. The Guardian, December 10, 2025. Africa critique of solar blocking. The Guardian view on solar geoengineering. Africa has a point about this risky technology. Editorial, The Guardian, Australia affordability. Albanese defends decision to sign off on a $100,000 U.S. trip for Anika Wells and staff. Australian politics. The Guardian, Australia RAWSEP view Aussie version of philosophy of RFK Jr. lack of knowledge of science and medicine. Unfortunately, the influencer died in October 2025. From the article headline, Hospital exhausted blood supply, trying to save the life of a wellness influencer after free birth. Victorian corner. Here's Victoria. The Guardian, Australia affordability. There is a feeding frenzy over the expenses of Anika Wells, but if we want women in parliament, it needs to be more family-friendly. Sarah Martin, The Guardian, Australia. Reserve Bank RBA affordability, no wonder the dramatic departure of Michelle Bullock from the RBA interest rate script left markets swinging wildly. Greg Jericho, The Guardian, California. Nature, we call him unbearable. California, homeowner laments uninvited beast. Los Angeles, The Guardian, California. Democrat wrong voters, wrong message. Autopsy by progressives lays bare the Kamala Harris failures. Democrats, The Guardian. Clean energy win in court. U.S. judge strikes down Trump order blocking wind energy projects. Trump administration, The Guardian. Dirty energy inquiry. U.S. senator calls for insider trading inquiry over Trump donors buying $12 million worth of shares. Oil and gas companies, The Guardian. Europe, lack of environmental protection. EU proposes exempting AI gigafactories from environmental assessments. European Commission, The Guardian. Europe, science and pollution, high levels of forever chemical found in cereal products across Europe. Study pesticides. The Guardian. Europe, The Guardian. View on Trump and Europe, more an abusive relationship than an alliance. Editorial, The Guardian. Europe, the U.S. is not just the unwilling ally of Europe, but an adversary steeped in far right ideology. Cass Mutta, The Guardian. Finland war, Santa at war. Hometown in Finland hosts NATO soldiers as Russian threat looms. Finland, The Guardian. Florida, Miami Democratic Mayor Eileen Higgins becomes the first Democratic mayor of Miami in 30 years. Miami, The Guardian. France, Louvre thieves evaded police with 30 seconds to spare. Investigation finds Paris. The Guardian. Games storytelling. RAWSEP view, protecting humanity from artificial intelligence. From the article headline, as AI floods our culture, here is why we must protect human storytelling in games. The Guardian. Human interest received an unwanted gift. Here is your fail-safe guide to how to respond. Polly Hudson, The Guardian. India, even the animals seem confused. A retreating Kashmir glacier is creating an entire new world in its wake. Glaciers. The Guardian magazine storytelling. RAWSEP view, protecting humanity from artificial intelligence. From the article headline, Gen Z DIY publications find new life as form of resistance against Trump. U.S. news. The Guardian. Mexico, lowering of violence. Daily killings in Mexico drop 37 under. Claudia Scheinbaum, but experts say data is problematic. Mexico, The Guardian. Music coordinated online attack sought to suggest Taylor Swift promoted Nazi ideas. Research finds Taylor Swift. The Guardian. Must possible public offering to Elon Musk. SpaceX preparing for flotation that could value it at over $1 trillion. SpaceX, The Guardian. New York City, RAWSEP view, best pun of the day. Fashion and wool. From the article headline, just not that into use gay sheep escape slaughter and take over in New York catwalk fashion. The Guardian. North Carolina Republican House Representative Nancy Mace escalated airport incident into spectacle. Police investigation says U.S. politics. The Guardian. Norway Venezuelan Nobel Peace Prize winner misses ceremony but vows to continue struggle. Maria Corina Machado. The Guardian. Reading confessions of a shopaholic novelist. Sophie Kinsella dies, aged 55. Books. The Guardian. Reading RAWSEP view, escapism or realism. From the article headline, Flat Earth by Anika Jade Levy review, Fear and Loathing in New York Fiction. The Guardian. Reading It Girl by Marissa Meltzer review, How Jane Birkin Became an Icon. Biography. Books. The Guardian. Reading Reinterpreted in new film, Margot Robbie and red latex Kate Bush impersonators and a pint of Emily Ale. My Crash Course in Bronte Mania movies. The Guardian. RFK Junior. Lack of knowledge of science and medicine. U.S. health officials re-examine RSV shots despite documented safety and efficacy. Trump administration. The Guardian. Russia and India look behind the pomp of the Putin New Delhi visit. The India-Russia relationship has weakened. Chaitik Bajpayee. The Guardian. Skate story review, hellish premise aside, this is skateboarding paradise. Games. The Guardian. Trump lack of affordability. U.S. politics live. Most Americans blame Trump for high prices. Poll shows Trump sports hating soccer is more American than apple pie. The World Cup. Nobody wanted the U.S. to host World Cup. The Guardian. Trump sports. 5 other Trump possible wins. Donald Trump has finally won a peace prize from FIFA. No less. Here are 5 other awards he should win. Arwa Madawi. The Guardian. Trump typeface is Times New Roman. RAWSEP view, strategy of ballroom blitz part 2 will be written in Times New Roman font. From the article headline, font of wasteful diversity. The Trump State Department orders return to Times New Roman. Trump administration. The Guardian. Ukraine. Zelensky ready for elections after Trump questions Ukrainian democracy. Ukraine. The Guardian. United Kingdom. RAWSEP view, far right leader supported by Elon Musk. Is he also what is termed an evangelical Christian in the U.S. and a hypocritical one at that? Does he believe in the God of love or the God of retribution, aka Trump? From the article headline, in what sense is Tommy Robinson a genuine Christian? None that I can see. Ravi Holy. The Guardian. United Kingdom medicine and science. Would idealistic doctors in the UK form shadow advisory groups if something like the now errant CDC cropped up in the UK? Would that ever happen in the UK? From the article headline, interviewing future medical students gave me that rare thing, hope for the National Health Service. NHS. Devi Sridhar. The Guardian. United Kingdom business. Rudolph at the Christmas market, cute festive attraction or damaging health of reindeer. Christmas. The Guardian. United Kingdom general practitioners tried using the new online GP booking system I have, and it was almost as miserable as my chest infection. Simon Hattenstone. The Guardian. United Kingdom travel, why I love Portsgatho and Cornwall, especially in winter. Cornwall holidays. The Guardian. United States food synthetic chemicals in food system creating health burden of $2.2 trillion a year. Report finds PFAS. The Guardian. World tourists to U.S. would have to reveal 5 years of social media activity under new Trump plan. Trump administration. The Guardian. World affordability, just 1/1000%, hold 3 times the wealth of poorest half of humanity. Report finds inequality. The Guardian.
Red Green Fox here. The quick red green fox jumped over the barriers to clean air. Red Green Fox here. Ready to sing to you the names of the 2025 major wood-burning biomass industry subsidy opponents. 1 Biofuel Watch. 2 Bulkley Valley Stewardship Coalition of British Columbia, Canada. 3 Kommite Schoen Luft, which means Beautiful Air Committee in German. 4 Dogwood Alliance. 5 Equity Group Foundation, nicknamed EGF. 6 Environmental Paper Network, nicknamed EPN. 7 Natural Resources Defense Council nicknamed NRDC. 8 per county and NARS ex Wysokie Isted, which means workshop for all beings in Polish. 9 Rachel Carson Council. 10 solutions for our climate nicknamed SFOC.
Cat's corner strategy with Tiger and Leone. Saying the quiet part out loud. Roar. Hi, I am Tiger. Our human asked us to get up from our naps and start Cat's corner strategy with Tiger and Leone. She gave us a list of internet allies which we will post for her here.
Hi, I am Leone. It is better for your mental fitness to go to these websites than to go to bro sites for advice. Substack letters from an American Heather Cox Richardson. Substack your local epidemiologist. The Midas Touch. The Guardian. The New York Times.
One introduction. RAWSEP view: the United States government was on track in the Biden administration to reduce the prices for both clean energy heat pumps and clean energy electric cars. Trump tariffs are expected to upset those plans to prevent future air pollution and prevent climate change. The United States government should, instead of certifying wood stoves as safe when they are not safe, go forward with regulations that ban wood stove use and direct government money for use of forest refuse only for home building and furniture building. For just a few examples of use of forest products for non-burning uses, it is well known from scientific and medical research that wood burning is a substantial source of PM2.5 emissions, yet the wood burning industry uses the scientifically debunked theory named carbon neutrality of wood burning to argue that wood burning replacing coal burning in industry, and in a trickle-down argument that wood burning should continue for home heating should continue. Presumably because it is called renewable, wood may be renewable in the sense that a tree can be planted in the place of a cut-down burned tree. But it takes centuries or decades for the newly planted tree to attain the stature of the cut-down burned tree. During those centuries or decades, photosynthesis, which converts CO2 to oxygen, and so sequesters some carbon, will not take place at the same rate as photosynthesis was performed previously, and wood burning emits both CO2 and PM2.5, and PM2.5 is not absorbed by trees, so PM2.5 is not diminished by planting a tree in the place of a cut-down and burned tree. In fact, a living tree closes its pores against the presence of PM2.5 from nearby wood burning, just as humans hold their breath in the presence of PM2.5 from nearby wood burning. And when a tree closes its pores, the level of photosynthesis that absorbs CO2 pollution goes down. Wood burning emits 90% PM2.5 particulate matter of 2.5 micrometer size, the perfect size to infiltrate the human lung, setting off a cascade of human health problems and early deaths. Contrary to many beliefs, wood burning emits 2.8 times the PM2.5 as the fossil fuel coal burning, and wood burning emits 450 times the PM2.5 as the fossil fuel natural gas burning. Replacing coal burning with wood burning creates more air pollution in the form of CO2 and PM2.5 than coal burning. This emission data comes from testing the cleanest burning wood stove in the United Kingdom, the Eco-Design Wood Stove International Convention. Does not count the emissions from wood burning. The emissions from wood burning are erased from all countries around the world when calculating if each country has met its climate goals. This non-counting or erasure of wood burning emissions data from climate goals does not mean wood burning emissions do not exist. RAWSEP view: purple air PM2.5 monitors hanging from the eaves of the house of a near neighbor should be used to measure the level of PM2.5 in the air hyperlocally in the yards of near neighbors of indoor residential wood burners. If PM2.5 levels exceed World Health Organization standards of 5 micrograms per cubic meter annually, then that evidence of air pollution from wood burning should lead to the shutdown of that indoor residential wood burning appliance, one appliance at a time if necessary.